This is why you should never ignore the red flags. Once there was a boy named Xavier who lived in a small town. He always had a crush on this girl but never said anything until one day he decided to sit next to her in class. But he'd never expect the terrifying things this would lead to. To his surprise, Xavier and this girl began hanging out more and more. Eventually, they began dating. But she had a secret, something no one would expect. Soon, Xavier found a new job and needed to move. He wanted her to move with him, but she said she couldn't because of her sick grandfather who couldn't take care of himself anymore. So on the day Xavier was supposed to move, he came to her house to say goodbye. And that's when things started going wrong. She said, "Let's just go. My grandpa doesn't need me anymore." But Xavier could see from the open door the body of an old man on the floor. Terrified, Xavier drove off and never looked back. Until years later, he finally found out the truth. A few years later, Xavier came back to his hometown. But when he asked about the girl, no one seemed to remember her. That's when one of his friends mentioned, 60 years ago, a young girl from this town killed her grandfather. As Xavier left, he drove past where the girl's house used to be and saw no evidence that a house was ever there at all. This is why you should always sit in the back seat. Vivian was spending a year in Korea when something terrifying happened. One night she was going out with her two roommates who spoke Korean, and at the end of the night they decided to get a taxi home. Vivian sat in the front and her two roommates sat in the back. This would be her first mistake. The driver spoke really good English and began telling jokes. Vivian found them really funny but soon realized that her roommates weren't laughing. In fact, they had a strange expression on their faces. Vivian said what's wrong, but they wouldn't answer. Suddenly, one of her roommates said something to the driver in Korean and he pulled over on the side of the road. Vivian knew something was wrong. They weren't anywhere near their apartment, but her roommates got out of the taxi and started walking away quickly. Vivian paid the driver, then got out to follow them. And that's when she found out the truth. Her roommate said, "Did you hear it? It was coming from the trunk of the taxi. A woman's voice saying, 'Help me, help me.'" Have you ever had a dream that felt like real life? One night, Noel remembered having a strange dream, but he wouldn't know that this dream would lead to a horrifying realization. In the dream, Noel was in a room with white walls. It looked like a hospital room, but it had no furniture, not even a door. Only one window where he could see a tall skyscraper outside, meaning he was in a very tall building. It felt like Noel had been in this room his whole life, but soon he started to realize that something was wrong. First, a tiny crack in the wall showed up, then a stain on the ceiling that wasn't there before. Someone was hiding a secret from him. Then one day, a note appeared on the ground. Noel opened it and saw that it was from someone claiming to be his sister. She said that he was trapped inside this room and the only way out is to leap from the window. He couldn't remember who he was before the room or even if he had a sister. But Noel had to find out the truth, so he jumped from the window and suddenly he woke up. Since then, he'd go about his daily life. Everything went back to normal, but still, he'd wonder whether this life was the dream. And the reality is, any minute he'd wake up again and find he's still trapped inside the room with the white walls. This is why you should never use a payphone. Once there were two boys in Japan named Kenzo and Tatsuya who loved scary stories. They were online one day when they came across an article about an abandoned suspension bridge, but they could have never expected the terrifying things their curiosity would lead them to. For some mysterious reason, every year people fall from that bridge and their ghosts are still rumored to haunt the area, but none of the boys actually believe this. So Kenzo decided to see for himself. As soon as he arrived at the bridge, he decided to call Tatsuya but saw that his phone had no signal. So instead, he called his friend from the payphone near the bridge. He said, "Guess where I am right now? I'm at the suspension bridge. There's no signal, so I'm calling you from a payphone." And that's when they realized something was wrong. Tatsuya said, "There is no payphone. I would have seen it in the photos." But his voice started breaking off. Kenzo turned around to see a line of people outside the phone booth, so he said, "Hey, I should go. There's a bunch of people here waiting to use the payphone." But Tatsuya said one last thing that saved his friend's life. "Don't move an inch. Don't get out of the booth." When Tatsuya finally arrived at the suspension bridge, he saw Kenzo standing on the edge of the bridge holding his cell phone to his ears. Do you style your hair the same way every day? Well, there's an urban legend about a woman who always wore her hair in a bun, but for her, this habit would lead to something terrifying. This woman loved wearing her hair in a bun, but she might have taken it a bit too far. She didn't want to style her hair differently or even take out her bun to clean her hair. Whenever she took a shower, she would just wear a shower cap to make sure the water didn't mess up her bun. At night, she would sleep with a towel around her hair so the bun didn't move. After a while, she had to put hairspray in it to mask the smell. Then her scalp started feeling itchy, so she would put more hairspray in it. Even when the itching got intense, she just applied more hairspray. But her husband finally found out about how bad the situation had gotten when he woke up one day and his wife was still asleep. He tried to wake her up, but she wouldn't move. She had died in the middle of the night. The husband called the police, fearing that something unusual might have happened. But when her body was examined, they finally took out her bun. Inside her hair, they found something terrifying. They found a huge spider had gotten into her hair, made a nest, and laid eggs. When the baby spiders hatched, they bit through her skull and ate her brain.